All right, last week we talked about this. We had one here. We showed you how cool it looks. Today we're going to start doing our test fits and explain to you exactly what that means from my perspective when I'm putting stuff like this on an old Ford. So after the break, away we go.
Restoration of a classic Ford is a journey of discovery. Let Autocrafters help you with yours. We offer quality parts for Falcon, Fairlane, F-Series, Galaxy, Maverick, and Pinto. Contact us today.
Okay, so we have pulled out the old battery tray area. Unfortunately, some people call them an inner fender apron, whatever. We pulled the old one out, and I did not video it because it was one of those things where I just started working and I didn't think about it again until I was done. So we pulled that all out, got rid of it, and now we have our nice shiny new part that we acquired from the guys at Autocrafters to use on this car. I will say this again, it's worth spending the money on both the front and rear apron sets to get this for the simplicity of this being just like it is right here. You set it in place just like the guys on the assembly line would have done, and then you go in and you make your spots on here. Now what I've got here is an alignment pry bar on the top and bottom bolts for the shock tower plate that goes in here for your bump stop on the upper control arm. And I've also got a factory style bolt and nut assembly on here to just hold everything in place as well. The bolts on here are pretty specific in size to this. In other words, they're going to fit that hole very, very well, and you don't want that alignment to be off. This is going to be your most critical spot. Yes, you could go in and drill out the panel if you had to move it over a little bit, but that's not preferable. What I want to be able to do is to just set this in like I've done with my alignment pry bar and my bolt here, and now go in and install the radiator core support and see how that's all going to mate up. There are a couple of places that we're going to have to do some things. Now for instance, this line right here on the bend is caved a little bit and it's crowned right here. That will be a problem when we're going in and doing our spots. Now, I'm going to talk about planning here. What we did is we cut our spot welds on the old panel and took the old panel out. What we will have to do now though is on this piece, go in and actually cut holes all the way around this flange here so that we can put that on there and then weld the back side of it so that the parts are not, your welds won't be seeable if you open the hood. They'll all be inside the inner fender, and we can even then go in and grind these flat if we want to do that. Same thing with the ones that are going to be all the way around the inside perimeter on the battery apron. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab the brand new radiator core support that we got from Autocrafters as well and slap that thing on the front end of it so you can see, and I can see, if we've got a solution or an even bigger problem. Counter. That's a good sound. Okay, now let's sit down and talk about it. A little bit on this side. What I'm doing is I'm using my knee pressure position. I may be caught on something underneath here or here, but it's good enough. Both sides are pretty close. In my opinion, it could probably come back just a little bit more on either side. All right, so we have mounted it up with the radiator core support in place. I'm telling you right now, the ease with which this goes in is pretty amazing. This is why I wanted to do this, because now what would have been me working for hours and hours to custom set up the Mustang battery tray area in here or inner fender apron is now just me going in and setting this thing in place just about like the guys at the factory did, and then going in and MIG welding up all my holes. And I mean, I'm real happy with it. You know, we've got a couple places that I probably should have thought better about it. Now, for instance, these 3 holes here, I probably should have gone in and actually cut these from the bottom through this panel that was originally on here with the spot weld cutter so that we didn't go all the way through this plate. But I can still go in here and MIG from the top on this and just grind them smooth so that you can't see that they're there. Everything else is going to be pretty straightforward. As I said before, we will go in on the back side over here and hold this up about every inch to inch and a half all the way around where this flange is and make that right. All right, now another thing I would recommend doing is taking like a white paint marker or something and marking your line here so that when you go in and drill the spot weld holes on the apron itself, you'll know where to drill them on the front section of this piece. It's usually 4 up here, and we'll replicate that when we do this panel, but you'll want to mark that up so you'll know exactly how far toward the rear of the car you can go. That was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be honest with you. I figured it'd be out here a few minutes just trying to get this thing to jig into place. We didn't spend a lot of time on that. Now what I'm going to talk real quickly before we bust out of here about is what you're going to need to do this other than a 110 or 220 MIG. You really don't need a 220 to do this. A 110 will do just fine. And you're going to need a lot of clamps. These style locking clamps will work great on the upper parts of the apron and in some areas down on the bottom portion of the apron. You're going to need at least 2 of these long C clamps like I've got right here so that you can go all the way out around it. And what I'll probably do is weld between the positioning on these 2 so that I can set that up and then move them around this apron to get them in place. Same thing on the driver's side apron. And by the way, the driver's side of this thing fits just as nicely as this side fits with the brand new parts. Now another thing you'll probably want to do is in areas down like this, you can actually take the places where you have holes set up and then go in and run a sheet metal screw in here to pull the metal for the apron into position on the lower frame rail rather than trying to have a ton of the C-clamps like we're using on the outside section over here to hold everything together. So you can go in then and weld to it, take that one out and then just weld, and it'll actually come out and rosette on the outside of it inside the inner fender of the car, and you can grind that smooth and it'll be okay. Plus it's over here underneath the battery. Nobody's going to see that. I'm not saying leave them in there, but you can use a sheet metal screw to, you know, pull everything together. It'll make it a little easier rather than trying to get those clamps around the frame rail and everything else. Now the last thing I'm going to talk about is one thing that I do see on this one that is not quite what I would hope it to be, and that's this section right here is dropped. You can see it pretty much starts right here and runs to this other one. I have a feeling that this whole thing up here was probably one stamping move, and it may have been died after it was stamped right here, and that's what caused this to dive off a little bit. What I will probably do is test fit it with a fender off camera, make sure it's going to fit, the fender's going to fit on here okay, and then go in and start working this to pull this up to get it into a better position. But it could be that this drop is something that comes there from the factory, and once you put the fender on here, it'll all line in, it'll be okay. So very happy. All right, so we probably will not be showing the MIG weld out on this unless you want to see it, because we still don't have electricity in this building that is high enough amperage for me to be able to run our 110 MIG welder. Every time I run my table saw, I trip the breaker, which is bizarrely all the way down in the house, probably, I don't know, 75 yards away from where we're at. Not good. If that's doing that, then I know that a MIG welder is not going to work. But if you want to see that, we'll crank up the generator and bring the generator over here and we'll weld this sucker in and show you exactly how we go about doing that. Leave me a comment in the section below to let me know that you want to see that. Also, check out our Patreon account. At the $10 a month level, you get monthly meetings with me on Zoom. A bunch of us all get together and we do tech Q&A. We talk about stuff. We have you help us know what we need to do to make Patreon a better place for you to be a part of it. So it's a real involved thing. We're not just sitting there, being a talking head to you. We actually want you to be involved and be a part of it to help us grow Patreon so Andrew can eat more than bread and water. That's the way it is, because that's how he gets paid. So he's really keenly interested in getting Patreon moving a little bit further along. Also, subscribe to the channel. I don't know what good it does for me to tell you to click the bell for notification anymore because YouTube has stopped notifying people via email. So if you're trying to look for that email in your email box, it doesn't do you any good. But still subscribe for whatever good that does you, because I don't know anymore now. Just be a subscriber, I guess. So if you do that, that's great, and I'm happy for you. Also, do me a favor, be kind to each other, love on each other, be good to each other. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you on down the road. So, this is the part where we now are doing something for our Patreons. The guys who are part of our Gasoline Media Patreon thing, you'll see names coming up the screen here. Each of these people is such a badass that they're supporting our show via Patreon, so Andrew doesn't have to eat bread and water. Well, he drinks the water and he eats the bread. Maybe he puts the bread in the water. I don't know. But all these people you're seeing right there, those are the folks that support us financially. They put their money where their mouth is. I have saved them so much money on their cars that they're actually willing to support. So thank you to our Patreon people. Gotta say that better. Patrons? I don't know. Probably what it's called. Probably patrons. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we'll give you a name. I tell you what, you guys that are part of the Patreon group, come up with a name for y'all. And we'll call you that on the show. And we'll say, whoever's name we pick, your name will be said at the end of the episode that we talk about it. I'm leaving now because I feel stupid. I've said too much.